And welcome back, YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. Today I would like to talk to you a bit more about Witcher 3. As I'm playing it a lot more recently, and I could do a video review of that game, but I sort of decided against it at this point because I think that certain aspects of Witcher 3 warrants a more detailed, or justifies a more detailed discussion, or let's talk, basically. And the first thing I noticed about Witcher 3 that really struck me is the quality in writing, right? The writing of Witcher 3, the little stories in the quests. I'm not talking about all of it, but some of these quests have such a high quality of storytelling and writing that I want to elaborate a little bit on that, especially if you compare some of the quests with those of Skyrim. I take Skyrim for comparison because Skyrim and Witcher 3 are both open world role-playing games in a fantasy setting. I could also compare it with Fallout 4, but I think it's a little bit fairer to compare Witcher with Skyrim. And what really struck me is that the quests in Skyrim are pretty straightforward. I'm not saying they're bad, but you might remember the quest that you have to find the golden claw or something like that. There was this shop owner, he says, okay, there's this family heirloom, this claw thing, I lost it, or somebody took it, I don't even know what was going on, but it's, you have to go to this dungeon and get me that claw. So that's basically the point where you do that. You get into the dungeon, you kill these draugrs and the undead. So that was pretty amazing. Take back the claw, and that was that. That's one of the first quests. If you play Witcher 3, and this is going to be a spoiler, but this is also a quest, a side quest, much like the one with the golden claw or something like that quest in Skyrim. This is a quest in Witcher 3 where you meet this dwarf, and he is the smith of this town, this small town, and he hires you to find the person who burned down his forge, right? So this is a sort of this starts as a sort of an investigation side quest. Nothing special at that point. The only thing is that the dwarf sort of complains about the fact that the people in the town don't seem to like him very much because he also works for the local garrison. You know, he forges weapons for them as well, the local soldiers. So Geralt sets off, he discovers the trail, finds some clues, basically the investigation stuff that Geralt does. Then you get to this house, right? And I went through the door, and the first thing I saw was this little kid sitting by the fire. So something popped in my mind. I thought, oh, all right, so the perpetrator has a family, right? And this is basically how Witcher 3 works, sort of subconsciously, almost. Because I saw the kid, right? Then I looked around the house and I found the guy, and obviously this was the guy who did it, because he had these bite marks and his arm was injured because of the drowners. And so you talk to the guy, and almost immediately the guy sort of tries to bribe you and says, okay, so yeah, I burned down the thing, I will give you money and just let the case just rest, right? Don't talk about it anymore. And at that point, that is sort of the decisive moment where you have to make a choice, right? You have to make a choice whether or not to accept the money from the guy and just leave the whole thing be, or take the guy and bring him to the dwarf, for some justice, right? And I choose to not take the money from the guy and bring him to the dwarf, right? You can brawl with him, or you can sort of persuade him. That's what I did with one of the Geralt's sort of powers that he has, right? So I brought him to the dwarf, and the next thing that happened is that the dwarf called in the soldiers. The soldiers took the guy away to be hanged. And I was like oh man, this was not what I wanted, actually. I wanted some justice for the dwarf, but should he be hanged for this, right? But the soldiers had a point too, in a way that they said, you have sort of betrayed us because you destroyed the dwarf's workshop, and we are depending on the dwarf to get our weapons. So yeah, they even say that you don't even need a trial for this. You're going to be hanged right there. And I thought that was pretty harsh, and it sort of made me think about that the decisions I made actually have an influence on the outcome here. It's not just bringing back some item and then getting gold or XP, but you actually feel that once you've made the decision, one that you might for yourself can defend, right? Because why should this guy get away with burning down the forge, right? That was my train of thought. But in the end, I thought, oh man, I should have taken his money instead, because then the guy would have lived, and the little boy would still have his father, and then the dwarf said something else that sort of rubbed extra salt into my wound, saying something like, because Geralt then responded to the guy saying, oh, and now you're really going to be popular here around town because now the guy is going to be hanged. And the dwarf's like, oh yeah, I don't give a shit because, these people don't give a shit about me, so who cares? So this is something that made me realize how choice and consequence in Witcher 3 are so different, right? You don't know how things are going to come out. It is unpredictable, and that makes The Witcher an amazing game. I'm not saying again that this is in all the quests like this, because there are other really small quests where you have the option to free someone or not, or something like that. They're just very easy and simple choices. But even though this is not even part of the main quest, but I think quality-wise, this mission, this quest for the dwarf, is so good that it could have been part of the main quest, but it wasn't. So it's really a testament of good writing and people working on the top of their game at CD Projekt Red for creating this side quest, this quite small side quest, because it's just in this little village that it takes place, the whole thing. So that makes Witcher 3, in terms of writing, I think one of the best games, best RPGs I've ever played. And that's what I wanted to discuss more in detail, to explain it a bit more to you guys. Because if I'd done a simple video review, I would say, quests are amazing because you never know what the outcome will be. But now I can more or less illustrate what I mean by that, right? I can elaborate on that. And so this is the first video about The Witcher 3. I have a bunch of other videos in my mind, some ideas about Witcher 3 that I want to discuss with you. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Thanks.